February 11th, 2021. You're looking at the exhaust vapor off our Cooper-Bessemer GMV-10's. It's minus 30. And you can see how that exhaust vapor is laying over. There's a 10-mile-an-hour wind out here, which means wind chill is in the minus 45 Celsius. It's friggin' brutally cold out here today.
We're in the compressor building here, and I'll explain a few things. You're looking at the exhaust stack there, of course, and then that green is your air intake filter. I grabbed the door handle to open it, and the latch was frozen. First thing here, when we walk in, take a look at the air intake on this engine. The frost on it, because it's so cold outside, minus 30. There's the frost on that. That's on one of the GMV-10's. Those have a supercharger. At Carson Creek, we have two different types of these Cooper-Bessemer engines. Of course, they're all GMV-10's, but we have the unit called a GMV-A, which has a supercharger. And we have GMXDs, which have a piston in the crosshead for increasing your scavenging air, which I'll try to explain here. But this unit you're looking at is a GMXD, and because this unit only has 3 compressor cylinders on it, it has to have a small auxiliary compressor piston in between on the other 2 crankshaft throws. And those are just for scavenging air generation. Okay, we're looking at a GMXD right here. The base of the GMXD has a manifold cast right in. It's an air distribution. So the air intake you see coming in the side, and then that manifold has ports coming out the other side of the base that are going to come right up into the crosshead of the compressor on the other side, which you're going to see right here. And this particular unit only has 3 compressors, so in between where those other crank shaft throws are, they just have a small piston mounted. And that piston is just for scavenging air production. On the other ones where there is a compressor, of course, that piston is incorporated into your rod that's going out to your compressor, which is a pretty cool idea. Scavenging air is used to increase the air for combustion, but it's also used for sweeping your exhaust gas. These units do not have air intake valves or exhaust valves. They just have Curtis porting, is what it's called, on your power cylinders. So here's another one. You're looking at the air intake into the base of this unit. When we go around here, I'll try to explain how, I'll show you what the manifold looks like where it comes out of each crosshead. So there you can see the casting coming out where your air is coming up into the crosshead. And we look up on the top, and you'll see there's a collector for that. On the cylinders on this side, the air just goes directly into that power cylinder. And then in between is a crossover. You see the crossover pipes? They're going over to the manifold that's on the other side of the engine to supply the scavenging air to that other side. There's your air intake right there. right into the side of the power cylinder. That's your Jacko water oil exchanger on the GMXD. So this is a GMVA with the supercharger on it. Supercharger has two different output pipes off it going to each side of the engine. And then you just have a straight manifold going down each side for your air intake. Same idea, just goes directly into the side of your power cylinder. GMVA produces 135 horsepower per power cylinder. The GMXDs are 110. So 1100 horsepower for the GMXDs, 1350 horsepower for these GMVAs. You're looking at one of our old units that got mothballed. It spun a bearing on the crankshaft, wiped out that unit. When you're looking at these engines, one of the things that's interesting about them, every one of them is set up with different compressors. This particular unit has 3 first stage compressors and 2 second stage. Some of our other units will have 2 first stage, 3 second stage. Another one we can switch it to run just first stage or just run second stage compression. We have 4 engines just doing process gas compression and 2 that are doing propane compression for the refrigeration system. That's your oil injection system on this unit. There's oil injected into the power cylinders and into the compressor cylinders for lubrication. That silver thing with the 4 black knobs is your Woodward governor. Here's your pyrometer for monitoring firing temps. You monitor the oil and fuel pressure right there. That little blue guy you're looking at, he is a lubricator counter, and there's shutdown switches on there if you don't have adequate lubrication flow. Pretty dark in here, so I'm going to shine my flashlight in here to show you where the ignition switch is and your valves for your starting air. Right here you can see the ignition switch, the line for your high pressure starting air, and then that black valve with the green thing on it, that's your fuel into the engine. There's your electronic ignition. All of your shutdowns that we monitor on these it's just analog, just old pneumatics. There's one of your engine vibration shutdown switches. And there's a second one here down here further on the frame. Engine vibration shutdown. Those round things are explosion doors. If you get high pressure in your engine crankcase, there's a spring-loaded disc in there that'll pop out. This is your air intake control on one of the GMVAs. The GMXDs do not have this. In the winter, when the air is denser and much heavier, you'll actually have to throttle this air intake valve closed using that regulator. It's just a big butterfly valve there going into your supercharger. This is one of the propane compressors. This is GMXD type. There's just 2 stages on a propane compressor. First stage suction comes in and the discharge of it goes directly into second stage suction. There's our clipboard with the reading sheets. It's the fuel gas carburetor. We're going to go up top here. We're going to climb the ladder and go up and look at the top of the engine. See if you can see the stuff that's on this unit. First thing, these all have the capability of having 2 spark plugs, but we only run a single spark plug, so the second spark plug just has an old dead plug filling the hole. And that's just to save money on ignition components, because now you've only got one ignition coil to maintain, one spark plug lead to maintain, one spark plug per cylinder. There you can see the ignition coil and the spark plug lead. That valve and that line going in, that's your high pressure starting air. And then where you see that rocker arm, that's your fuel gas. Well, I'm about to go for a startup on this one unit. First thing I'm going to do is go over and reset my electronic ignition. When I look at my analog shutdown panel, I pull out this black knob which will activate the air to all these shuttle valves, and it'll reset all my permissives. When the permissives reset, on the end of your fuel valve there's a green thing that activates, which I'm pointing at right there. So this unit's ready to start. First thing, you wrap open these quarter turn valves, which puts high pressure starting air onto the power cylinders and gets the unit rolling over. You immediately then turn your ignition on, and now I'm trying to give it fuel to get the thing to fire. This particular unit has really bad slow start valves, so it doesn't roll over properly. I was really having trouble getting this unit to go this day. Took me about 3 tries. Now we're going to go for start number 2. So there's your high pressure starting air pressure, 220 pounds, just barely adequate. There's your reset for your fuel. When the analog's all clear, it'll go green. So we pull that out, resets all your shuttles for your pneumatic things. You see the startup bypass timer just went green. Now your fuel valve, that will be activated green as well. And we do the same business. Hit it with high pressure starting air, turn on the ignition, and then feather in that fuel and try to get the thing to fire. And the units are in good shape. I mean, they just fire it, there's nothing to it. But this unit is really being a pain. As I'm trying to start this, you can see above, you can see the push rods going back and forth on each power cylinder as the unit tries to go over, and you can hear the thing just, it's trying to light off, but it's not rolling over fast enough. See the little pops there on each power cylinder as it's trying to get ignition, trying to get combustion started. You gotta be real careful, you can backfire these things. Of course, I never do because I'm somewhere in the next group. You can't tell that by watching this. Well, I got the unit going on about my 3rd try. That's your high pressure starting air distributor. We'll go up on the top of the engine and I'll show you again where that comes into the power cylinder. Right there, that line, that's your starting air valve. And this unit's got bad starting air valves, so sometimes when it's supposed to be getting high pressure air to the power cylinder for rolling over, that valve doesn't function. So, and there's 2 or 3 of them on this unit that are bad, and it really makes the thing roll over slow. Which, of course, the unit just can't fire as well when it's barely turning over. Right? Well, I got the unit running now. It took me about 3 tries. You can hear the engine still kind of surging and still getting the fuel to it, getting it the RPM to level out. And you'll see here it's doing about 287 RPM right here. So I'm going to go out and fire the compressor up to get the compressors loaded up. Right Right here I have to tweak the engine RPM, just adjusting the going output slightly, giving a little bit more fuel. Right here I have already loaded second stage compression, and that's to get the engine RPM to settle out, resurge a little bit. Now I will load first stage. You always close your flare valve first, then you open up your compressor discharge gas. And once your discharge is open, then you're going to open up your suction gas, and then that loads that compressor. Because it was so cold, the air valves were hard open, some of those. There's your suction valve just opening up to that particular compressor. And we're going to go over and load the other first stage compressor. So now the compressor is fully loaded, and we're going back into the compressor building to monitor how the engine's running, and she's purring away. You see here it's doing 297 RPM there, 300 RPM. So thumbs up, that's what 1350 horsepower sounds like. This will monitor the firing temps on each power cylinder, and this thing's actually, once it was running, it's pulling real nice firing temps on each cylinder. Another look at your Woodward governor. These guys are used to monitor the oil injection going to each power cylinder and compressor cylinder. So now we'll walk around and just show you a few things on the unit. This green guy here, that monitors rod drop to that compressor cylinder. That's a loading valve for that particular compressor. And you see these is where we can load or unload a particular compressor cylinder. And you'll see that we have multiple of these loaders on individual compressors. Another rod drop sensor right there. We'll take a look at one of our propane compressors. This particular unit is down because it had a cracked head. Not right there. That guy was cracked, so he's out of commission. Then we'll take a look here at the old mothballed K2. So this unit, like I said, it spun one of the main bearings in the engine crankshaft and it wiped it out. So it's just parted out basically. It's interesting though, it lets you kind of see some of the way that this engine frame is built. See the huge bolts there, each power cylinder is bolted onto that frame. All of the components that come off that old engine are out in a cold warehouse out here. There's a power cylinder. There's our power cylinder pistons. Those guys are like 14 inches by about 21 inches. This is one of your compressor connecting rods, and you take a look at the two bearing holes you see on that, and those are where your power piston connecting rods attach. So if you could picture that, it's a V10 engine with 5 crankshaft throws, and each of those has one of those massive connecting rods out to your compressor, and 2 power cylinder pistons articulating from that same connecting rod. That is your air intake manifold. You can see the ports where the air is coming out to go into the side of each power cylinder. And here we're going to look, here is your exhaust, that's your exhaust manifold. And a few other components just very carefully all wrapped up in plastic for future use. Inevitably they'll get put onto one of the other units when there's a failure somewhere. Then this huge casting right here, this bolts onto the front of the engine, and that's where your oil pump and your governor and all of that stuff is connected up. The one component that I didn't find in that storage was our power piston connecting rods. I'm not quite sure where those things are. I have to ask the mechanics. Well, this is going to be the conclusion of this video on these Cooper-Bessemer GMV-10 engines. I hope you found it at least a little bit interesting.